The Seattle Seahawks select.
This is Brock Huard's Draft Profile.
You want traits? Check. You want a vocal leader? Check.
At the end of the day, you have to say, okay, what's best for the organization?
Can you make people around you better, and can you bring people together?
Every day at 9 a.m. leading up to the draft.
I told you yesterday with Penix he would be the final one that may not be a first rounder, although I would still bet that he is. 32.5 is where Vegas thinks. I think Penix goes in the first. But from this day forward and all next week will be first round guys. Will they be Seattle Seahawks? I'm not sure. And this one, honestly, in my 20 is the most complicated. Because Byron Murphy, defensive tackle from Texas, is the most talented interior defensive lineman in this draft. And typically the most talented interior defensive lineman in an NFL draft is not on the board at 16. Typically those humans go way off the board because they're very, very hard to find. And frankly, if Byron Murphy were 6'3" or 6'4", he wouldn't be at 16. But Byron Murphy is 6 foot tall. At the combine, he was 6'1.5". He was 297 pounds. Maybe he was a little light because of what Troy Fautanu just got done talking to us about. You know, because I think he played about 305 at Texas, or maybe he said, "Screw it, I'm going to be light and as dynamic as I can possibly be to set myself apart." And he was. He ran 4.87 at the combine at 300 pounds. He jumped 33 inches, which is a pretty extraordinary jump. Salk, he benched 225 28 times. My buddy Bruce Feldman puts together his freaks list during the summer, right before the training camps begin all over college football. Byron Murphy was on his list last year. And there are a lot of talented and great athletes at Texas, but as far as just freakish athleticism and power and strength, this guy tips the scales as number one. He did a 455-pound front squat. Are you familiar with a front squat?
A front squat?
A front squat. A front squat is like when you do a power clean and you got the bar like in front of you, your elbows in front of you, so you're holding that amount of weight. He said he could have done, strength coach Stottman, could have done 500 pounds on a front squat. He power cleaned 375 pounds. That 28 reps at 225 is nearing a 500-pound bench press. He is a ball of muscle. Is that what the Seattle Seahawks team needs? You want to talk about line of scrimmage? You got Leonard. You got Jaron. This is a different body type. This is a more, now Mebane was heavier and not as fast, but he was super twitchy, super explosive. This is more kind of in that Brandon Mebane mold of low to the ground, unbelievably powerful. He shared Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year honors with his buddy Tavondre Sweat, who I profiled earlier in the week, who, you know, it's almost like twins, right, with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, because Sweat's 365 pounds and 6'5", and this guy is a 6 foot, 300-pound ball of muscle. I told you earlier in the week it's complicated for me because I didn't leave Texas games going, man, Byron Murphy was a monster. Part of the reason I asked Troy Fautanu that question of who was the most elite dude he faced, I was curious if it would be Liatu Latu from 2023. And if I gave Troy time, maybe he would come up with different answers. I was curious if he was going to mention either Sweat or this guy. I was curious if he would mention the Michigan Edge guys who may be on the Seahawks draft board in the mid-rounds as well. He didn't go in any of those directions. He actually went with Brandon Dorless, talented dude out of Oregon that may be a third or fourth round pick who checks many more boxes than Byron Murphy does for the Seattle Seahawks when it comes to length and height and some of those different metrics. Byron Murphy is going to be likely the first interior defensive lineman drafted. And because that's a need, because that's always a want, he's certainly somebody I have a watch on when it comes to these Seahawks next Thursday night.
All right, so would you do it?
I wouldn't take him at 16. I couldn't take him at 16.
Even if he's the best defensive lineman on the board?
I couldn't. He's the best interior defensive lineman on the board.
Pretty rare.
It is rare. I got Jaron. I got Leonard for the next 3 years. I still have Dre Jones, who's a guy that can move inside and out, and I'm just kind of concerned about that height. Remember that little sucker last year that ended up going to Tampa and having a good year? Gosh, he was kind of like him. Where did he play? I know he went to Tampa Bay. Was he Pitt? There was an undersized guy last year.
I know who you mean.
Yep.
Give me a moment. I'll think of the name.
Yeah, and this guy kind of reminds me of that, although the production isn't as much. That guy had a lot of production. With Murphy, he did have 5 sacks last year in 14 games. That's pretty good. The year before, 1 sack. The year before, 2 sacks. So it's not as if I have ever seen those production numbers that I really want to see with a guy that's a little bit undersized.
Kelsey?
No, that's Swifty's boyfriend.
No, not Travis Kelce.
Yeah, no, that's not right.
Well, that's today's draft profile. I can
Totally see him in picture, right? Yeah, there you go. Cansey. There you go. Yep. This guy's in that mode, but Cansey was hyper productive. And maybe this guy I think was a little bigger. Cansey's probably 285. This guy could be 305, 310. And if they take him, Salk, I tip my cap and I say, great. That's awesome. You are addressing the biggest need on your team, the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. But I would prefer an offensive lineman, kind of like G. Scott, kind of like I think Ray Roberts, kind of like I think a lot of guys would say, man, you've invested capital on that defensive line. Let's find some guys on the offensive side to give Grubb and Huff an opportunity to lay their own foundation.
All right, there you go. That is Brock's draft profile today. Just a few of these left to go. Just 3 more next week before the draft on Thursday. Can't wait.